Mike O'Mara, I am excited to talk to you because you are one of the newest members of Southwest Michigan, at least that I've talked to here on this podcast. But I'm excited to meet you, learn more about you. We've got a good amount of time, but thanks for joining me on this one.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a newly minted Michigander.
Yeah. Now, hey, see, you know how to even say it, Michigander.
I was hoping that was right. I took a guess there. Stab in the dark. Here we are.
Well, Mike, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you? What brought you here, and where did you come from to start?
Okay, so up until the world ended last year, I was born and raised just outside Chicago. And then basically my whole childhood up through college, I was in and around the big city. Went to school at DePaul University, right just north of downtown Chicago. And then I just kind of steadily kept moving a little bit north. So my folks still have a house like south of the South Loop of Chicago, and I kept going little by little north. And I ended up in Evanston. So my last home before the one here in Michigan was right by Northwestern University in Evanston. And then, as we know, everything happened last year. And so I was upended in many ways, which I'm sure we'll chat about. Mm-hmm. And the short version of the story is that, myself and my partner, my girlfriend, whatever we call ourselves these days, we fell in love with the people in the area around here in Southwest Michigan, and found a house at a price that we would never ever imagine was possible where we come from. And here we are living so far an excellent life here. So
that's wonderful. And that's honestly a challenge. Moving is a challenge
yes.
For anybody, but doing it at a time where, like you said, the world had ended. I mean, just everything had been upended. Yep. With all different processes of doing anything. Yep. So it adds so many different challenges. But I mean, making that decision to move, I'm sure, was a big one. And we'll yes. talk about that in a little bit. But yes. So you grew up just outside of Chicago, mm-hmm. and then spent a lot of time in that area. Mm-hmm. So did you go to Northwestern University?
No, I went to DePaul. Okay. So I was at DePaul. I've since done some work with a lot of folks from Northwestern and worked with their music program there, but I didn't go there as a student myself. No, but I've pretty much worked all over the city at this point. It's scary when your world changes. As mine did, you kind of sit back and you take some stock of where you've been. And I realized that I had been all over the place, and I'm much older than I thought I was when I started. So,
Yeah. Well, what made me, or I guess our paths crossing, is that obviously we spend a lot of time on social media. Everybody does, but I always like to learn from new people and get to know new people. And I saw that you had posted in one of the Facebook groups or posts, mm-hmm. whatever. I mean, when you move to a new city, that's what you kind of do. Is you put the feelers out and say, hey, I'm new to the area. This is what I'm doing. Right. This is what I, have done as a profession, right. And I'd love to do more. And you, I will say, I mean, from just the little snippets of things that I've seen you post on social media and do all that, is that you have spent a lot of time in front of a piano.
Yeah, tons. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not only, I'd say, a very gifted piano player, but also, from what I've seen, you've written many songs, as well as musicals and things like that. So mm-hmm. I'm a musical nerd. I'm a theater nerd. So this is another reason why I thought we could have a conversation, because this whole conversation is just going to lead into our friendship in the end. At least that's what I'm hoping for. But so tell me about it. So you went to college, DePaul. Did you go and study music there?
Yes. So when I was a kid, I was I always tell the story to folks that I ruined my parents' two dreams they had for me. So my parents are physicians. They're both ER doctors, and of
Okay.
course, like I respect that immensely. But it was pretty obvious to me pretty early on that I didn't have the I didn't like to see tons of blood,
Sure.
and I didn't like to see people suffer. Um, and so that was not for me. So that was one dream ruined that my parents had for me, is they wanted me to be a doctor like them. I didn't end up doing that. And then the second one was my dad said, "Well, this kid's pretty big. Maybe he'll end up playing football for someone." And yes, it is true that I am a rather large man, but I didn't like causing pain. So I didn't have that kind of like killer instinct. I
Sure.
didn't want to, throw other kids around. So while other people wanted to play football, I was generally writing poems and drawing and doing paintings and stuff like that. So I knew that the arts were somewhere that I was probably going to end up in from a long, long time ago, and it kind of just came to a head at the end of high school, where the college advisors are like, "So, kid, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Well, I mean, the thing that I can see myself getting up every single day from now until the rest of the time doing would be music,
Yeah.
But the problem was I was incredibly, and still to this day, I mean, it never really goes away. But when I was a kid, I had incredible stage fright and anxiety. Um, and so I told myself, I said, I can work myself up to take one audition. I'll take one real audition, and if I get into that school and they think I have a shot, then I'll be a musician. Otherwise, I'm going to go do something normal that regular civilians do.
Mhm.
I went to DePaul and I took the audition. I got in. And here I am. It's 20 whatever years later now. So yeah.
And were you one of those kids that I mean, I know you said your parents are in the medical field and have
Yeah.
been. And so were you at a young age and said, I want to try piano or just music in
Oh
general?
no.
Did they have you do that
Yes.
or?
Yeah. No, it was definitely so. My grandfather was a jazz pianist
Okay.
in Chicago in the 40s and 50s, and he got back from World War II, and then like basically played all the clubs, when it
Yeah.
used to be, when jazz and blues were the thing in
Mhm.
Chicago. Um, so I think from the moment I was born, I was kind of doomed to have to at least dip my toe into it, because my
Right.
folks, like the second I was 5 or 6 years old, they said, they took me to my grandfather and said, "Okay, like it's time, let's see if the talent jumps a generation or whatever."
Mhm.
um and so he became my first piano teacher, and truth be told, I fought against it for 16 years. Like I told myself this wasn't my thing. It always seemed to me to be my parents' thing, that
Yeah.
they wanted it for me. And so, as I was a kid and as I was a teenager, you have that natural kind of rebellious nature about
Mhm.
you when you're, 10 or 12 or 14 or 16, where you don't want to do what your parents want you to do, right? Or you don't think it's yours. And it really took a shifting of my own attitude towards music and being creative, where it kind of just clicked for me right when I needed it to, like senior year of high school. I kind of just like woke up and said, "Wait a minute, like I don't have to just do the music that my parents want me to do. Knowing music in general means that I can expand," and it just exploded from there in terms of like my desire to
Sure.
practice the technical part of it, but also my desire to kind of learn all about it, and then to teach it to others too.
Yeah, and you do that, and that's another thing we'll talk about in a little bit, about the challenges you probably have faced just in the past year of teaching lessons and doing all that stuff. But
Yeah.
your grandfather, like you said, a jazz piano player, did he kind of push you towards learning jazz? Or did he say let's try and learn about all of the different genres of music and different
No,
styles.
yeah, actually it's interesting looking back on it, because even though his big thing was jazz, he didn't actually we didn't actually do any jazz. We did all like classical.
Oh,
So
wow.
he started me on like just like if you went to any other music school
Mhm.
today, if you started anywhere, they'd probably start you with some general book that takes you way back, and then you don't really specialize until you get a little bit older, if you start as a kid, or better as if you start as an adult. Um, but yeah, we did all. I heard him, around his house playing jazz all the time, but whether it was because I was just too young to know the difference, or whatever, when he was teaching me, we did all classical stuff, and I didn't get into jazz myself until I was well into adulthood, and it
Mhm.
made me then appreciate what he was able to do at the instrument. Remembering that what he was able to do when I was a little kid. He was the type of musician where he would just sit down and just improvise like for
Right.
hours, and just play out of his head, and that's never really been me. I've always been more of a, if you put it in front of me, or at least if you give me some idea of you want me to do,
Mhm.
I can do it. But just to start with nothing, that came to me later. Like that came to me in as I became a songwriter and a playwright and things like that. Yeah, but that I came around. That was a long cyclical journey for me. I started as a classical only pianist for a very long time.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's, I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, when I've had music classes in high school and college, is that it's jazz is always the, what I feel like is that the best jazz musicians are the ones that have the foundation
oh yeah,
of all of the different
yeah,
things, and just knowing how everything is built. Then they can play around and just have
right,
some fun, but it's still that foundation of
right,
the knowledge.
right.
And that's wonderful that your grandfather was able to pass that on to you and then give you those tools,
Yeah,
and then now you're passing that on to other people, and people of all ages to
yep,
learn that. And so I think that's awesome,
yeah.
and so important to help, you know, hone your craft, but also teach others to do so. When did you get into teaching others to play and just music in general?
Well, I started teaching when I was in undergrad or college. So I went in for music ed, actually.
Yeah.
My degrees ultimately ended up being music composition, but I pretty much did the whole music ed track while I was in college as well. So I started teaching seriously when when I was about 18, and I've been a teacher ever since. My main career ever since has been teaching people. It started just piano, and I added voice lessons 15 years ago, and songwriting, because of my degrees and things like that. So
Yeah.
I've been teaching folks for 20 plus years now. Yeah, which
Wow.
is crazy for me to think about, because like in my head I'm still like, I don't know, 25, but I'm not.
What, but that's the fun part, is that, if you've had say, a young kid that starts with you at a very young age, and then you see them progress over the years, but then also, like, see them get to that stage of going to college, which will
Yeah,
make you feel old, but then
yeah,
also when they get into teaching themselves, it's that wonderful chain
yeah,
reaction
yeah.
that
It's truly enlightening and also terrifying to see people that I knew, way back when, whatever, and I still see everyone in the whole world because of social media. Now we're all connected, no matter where people move or whatever.
right,
And you see people getting married and have kids and stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, aren't you in like fifth grade? Like,
right.
it's horrifying what that means for me, but here we are.
Trust me, I'm in my 30s, but I'm already feeling that with a lot of people telling me, like, I've known you for this long and that, and they don't see them go off to college, and it's just,
Yeah,
I remember them when they were 5 years old, or
right,
just being born.
right.
But so you got into, so like you said, with the stage fright that you had, did you ever overcome that? Did you ever feel like, if I can get past this stage fright, I could be a performance, I could perform all the time?
Well,
Did you ever feel
yeah,
that?
I mean, I think with most people that deal with a significant amount of anxiety in their life, whether it's
Sure.
centered around a specific type of performance anxiety or whether it's more generalized or whether it's about their work or whatever. I
Mhm.
think the it 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 helps to reframe your brain and to treat it as something that's kind of always going to be there but can be ignored, rather
Yeah.
than to treat it as something that you have to defeat. Because if you treat it as like an enemy, you're always like, you can't ever beat it because it is you, right? It's like, so it's like it's part of you saying you can't do this or you like whatever. It would be different if it was fully externalized, right?
Right.
So it's what works. So I guess the short answer to what you're saying is no. I never thought I would defeat it. I got to learn to live with it, and
Yeah.
I got to learn to say, every single time I get up on stage, or every single time I give a big speech somewhere, or if I have a big full class and I'm
Mhm.
teaching it or whatever, it's always going to be there, right? There's always going to be something, some annoying part of the back of my head that
Sure.
says, "Oh, you can't do this," or "This is extremely scary," or whatever. But you learn to ignore it. You learn to make fun of it. You learn to say, okay, silly voice in my head, like, go ahead. I'm still going to do what I want to do with my life, right?
Yeah, and
And
you
then,
can use it and channel it
yeah,
to help you and give you that little boost or that a little
right,
adrenaline that you may need to
right,
help you perform.
right, exactly, yeah, yeah. And it takes time, and it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, honestly, when I entered college, I mean, I was like, it was a I would like, my hands would shake so bad I could barely play my instrument.
Yeah.
So it did take, like, it takes, you just got to keep, like the old saying or whatever, you have to get back on the horse, right? If you want to break it, that's
Mhm.
the way it goes, right? And sometimes you're going to have good days and some days you're going to get thrown.
Yeah.
And that's the way life goes. So, um, I think it's important for everyone, no matter what field you're into, to identify for yourself, like, these are the things that are important to me. I want
Yeah.
to do these things with my life. And if you identify those things, you can get there. You just have to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's also like some of the stuff you said about the adapting and the and looking at things, and you can't just sit there and act like everything's going to be the way it is all the time. And this last year is
Right.
a true testament to that, because especially when it comes to musicians, whether
Right.
they're gigging musicians or they're ones that are even teachers, you have to
Right.
adapt the way you do things, because whether it's piano or any other instrument, most of the time you're in front of them or next to them,
Yep.
showing them how to do certain things.
Yep.
But now we know that if you want to be able to continue to do that and to continue to teach, you have to look at other avenues.
Yep.
And you've looked at that and said, well, were you doing virtual lessons or things of that sort before this, so that you almost sort of prepared yourself for it?
I mean, it wasn't something that was completely foreign to me. I've always kind of been, a tech head, like, I've built my own computers in the past, and I know how networking works and all that kind of jazz. And I'm not so old that I don't, like, understand smartphones and things like that. So I
Right.
mean, so I had done, a class here or a lesson there, completely online before, but it was a culture shock, to, I think, students more than me, right?
Yeah.
Different people obviously learn different ways, and it is, strange, or at least it was strange a
Mhm.
year ago, for many people to not have me physically there. Instead, if I need to tell them some way to hold their hands or something to do, I have to, move the phone to my own hands, and it's different than just being able to like go to the other side of the piano with someone.
Sure.
Like, look at what I'm doing here. So I think there's been like little technical hurdles here and there to figure out how to make it feel as normal as possible. But it's never going to be exactly the same. But you make do, and we're in a world now where we've had to make a lot of things as good as we can, or as normal as we can, and that's been just one of them. There's been some people that it has actually helped because they, for whatever reason, they had to move away this past year because of financial reasons or whatever. A bunch of people are going a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
So for me, personally, there's actually a number of students that I was able to keep because we could go fully virtual, where I'd never, we would have just said bye in the times before.
Yeah. And that's the great part too, is like if somebody's in that stage of really, really getting into it and getting better and better as the years go by, or and they say, I want to have you as my teacher forever, then if you move or they move, that can be an added challenge, but the virtual has certainly helped. Now, I want to talk a little bit about you've composition, you've written songs, what made you get into that and writing songs? I know you had that degree in composition, but what made you get into the point of, whether it be for a musical or for a choir, what made you want to really get into doing that?
I think creativity is born out of necessity. Like, I think that you feel that for whatever reason you have words in your head that need to live somewhere. You have a melody in your head that needs to live somewhere. And I think it was partly that, right? So that is kind of the part of it that comes, from within, that doesn't have anything to do with any job or anything. So for me, there was that for sure. And there was also the slightly more practical side for me, which was I looked at the material that was available to like students of mine, and people I knew, colleagues of mine, and things like that. And there was a lot that was missing. For me in particular, I worked back in Chicagoland. I worked with a particular group of my students who were all around the same age. And when I met them, they were all about 7th, 8th graders. And then I worked with them through high school, things like that. And the material available to them was just not firing them up. And it honestly wasn't firing me up. I wasn't too inspired to pay $1 zillion to get the rights to do the 7,000th version of Annie or like whatever with the kids I had, right?
Yeah.
And so I started my own school and started writing musicals specifically for and about the dreams and struggles and of that age group. And we found that we liked those shows a lot more than the ones that were out there. So there was a part of it where, like, obviously I just wanted to create. I felt like I needed to. It's part of who I am is to make new stuff up. But there was also the practical where, if I could write a show myself for the students I was working with, then I didn't need to charge their parents to pay for the rights to rent a show that's $2,000 to rent it for a month or whatever. So there was that. So it's kind of both the practical and the impractical, which is kind of being an artist.
Right. Well, and then it's that, like you said, the different age groups or out of necessity sometimes with whether you're working with a community theater, and it's like, that cost of rights to a lot of these bigger shows and bigger musicals not only can be more expensive, but it's more fulfilling when you can say, well, this was written about, my age group, maybe even my area where I'm from. And so,
Right.
yeah, they're going to be into it more, but also it's going to be more accessible to the community to be able to see and hear this music. So
Right.
what comes first for you when it comes to songwriting?
Mhm.
Is it the music or the lyrics? Because I know you said
Um,
poetry was a big thing for you,
yeah.
but also that musical background.
For me, it is 95% of the time lyrics first.
Okay.
And it is that way because I feel like every song or every good song has a story, right? It has
Sure.
a little through line, and then if you expand that out to like a musical, every song really should drive the story forward, right?
Yeah.
And so if storytelling is number one, then I feel like that should be the primary, the first focus. Like make sure that the words you are going to set are the words that you really meant to
Mhm.
say, and you're not just jamming things in there because you're trying to make it fit within a melody that's
Right.
pre-existing that then gets in your head and gets cemented as like the thing, right? So I feel like I want to set my words first and say what I want to say in the way I want to say it, and then I can lean on musical knowledge to hopefully make that interesting, make that setting interesting,
Yeah.
musically as well as in terms of storytelling. But yeah, so usually it's 95%. You'll have the odd melody that'll come to you in the middle of the night. You're
Right.
like, oh my god, I love that. I love that jump, or I love that
Mhm.
this or that here or there, and then sometimes I'll have that and I'll hum that into a recorder so I don't forget it in the morning or whatever. But most of the time, it's words first.
That's something that as a singer it's nice because you don't have to sing something and try to fit one word into a
Right.
crazy melody of some kind. So I thank you as a singer.
No problem.
But that's great. And so, and you know that too, because I mean, you also you learned singing and learned that, that something like that is something you got to work in there. You can't just say, well, this is going to be something that's going to sound really cool. But if the singer
Right.
comes in there and says, there's no way in heck I'm going to even touch that and be able to do that.
Right.
So that knowledge, I think, is probably also something that's important for you when it comes to
Right.
writing a song and doing
Mhm.
something of that sort. How many songs have you written?
Uh, that would be difficult for me to even. Oh my god. I mean, probably, I don't know, 500, 600. I don't know,
Okay.
something around there probably, because
Wow.
I've written probably 30 or so musicals, and each of those
Okay.
have somewhere between 13 and 16
Yeah.
songs each, not counting
Right.
reprises and
Yep. Hmm.
whatever encores and things like that. And then I've written separate things for choir, and then I've written separate things just as myself to play wherever,
Sure.
at gigs or whatever. So I have no idea, to tell you the truth. Probably somewhere, it's, I don't know, somewhere between 600 and 1,000. I don't know.
Wow. See, that's awesome. And that's something that's great. What are you hoping to do? You have a dream of something you want to write, or you'd like to have one of your musicals performed? Obviously Broadway, but what are some other places you'd love for your musicals, or a place that you'd love to have a musical performed?
Well, I mean, there are, I think the ultimate goal is to make the next thing that you write better in your own mind than the one you just wrote.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Well, I think that is the most important dream to have, and the thing that keeps people going, because the minuscule amount of people that will ever be able to see their own work somewhere like in Broadway, or in a
Yeah.
movie or something like that. Um, it's not. It is not just talent, and it's not just hard work,
Yeah.
because there are millions and millions of creative people that are very talented that all work very hard. It is also so much luck that folks, certain folks get to see their stuff in big lights in big places. So I think I learned a long time ago that for me, if that, like, that's going to be my only like arbiter of success, then I should pack it up, because that's like saying like, I'll never feel accomplished unless I win the lotto. I mean,
right. Well, it's
okay.
Yeah, and it goes back to your parents hoping that you'd become a football player or something like that. Some kid that's an athlete that may be halfway decent or
Right.
good at their high school as a football player, or basketball player. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to play a professional sport.
I tell you what, though, in terms of like dreams that are maybe not that insane to reach, I would very much like, and thankfully I've been able to live this one before. But I think one of the coolest things is to give back to where you're from, or where you're living, or to see and hear your stuff done by people that could have been you when you were younger, things like that. Like I've worked with a lot of schools back where I'm from in Chicagoland, and it's so cool to then go back into a school that like was just like my school when I was in 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th grade, and to hear my own stuff, to write stuff for kids in schools. That's awesome. Or to be able to write something for be it a church or a school in the area, or a business, or like whatever. And then just to know that, like, oh, they know that I live here, and they ask me to do something like that, is like super cool. So I don't think, well, who knows, like, you never know where your stuff is going to go. It's not like if Disney calls me tomorrow and says, we want to give you $50 million, like, write us, I'm not going to say no.
No, I've got this High School Musical I've got to take care of. I mean, you're right.
I'm not going to say no to it, but I'm also not going to hold my breath just waiting for the biggest names or whatever to do my stuff, because I think if you do that, you get real bitter real quick as a creative person, right? I'll tell you another thing that like makes me extremely proud is that I've had a number of students that I can remember just a few years ago were learning how to write songs with me in my living room. I've got a number of them now that are writing songs down in Nashville for like big time people.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's pretty cool that person, like, they learned, the basics of how to write, what they were into from me, and now they're writing for all these other folks. So like, I've had students like that, and I've had performance-based students go on and they go to New York and they're doing Broadway stuff now. So like, that's not me. But then again, I didn't choose that. I chose to focus on the director side and the teacher side and the behind the scenes and the writer of this stuff. I didn't choose, I don't want to be famous. I want to be helpful. I want to be the best teacher I can be. And I want to be the best performer I can be too. If people, when I do gigs, I want to, you obviously want to do well. But I'm not, I'm not in it for, I don't need anyone to know my name except for the people interviewing me, I guess. And you got that right, so I'm fine.
I did. That was the first thing on my list. So like we talked about, you are one of the newest members of Southwest Michigan, at least that I've had a chance to talk to. What's been your impression so far in Southwest Michigan? Obviously, coming here in a pandemic, it's not the exact the ideal time for either you or even the community to say, "Hey, welcome. Let's show you all everything." We're not putting our best foot forward at the moment. But what's been your impression so far of living in Southwest Michigan?
Oh man, I'll tell you what. I think. Well, okay, so moving stinks. Like everyone, I don't know anyone who likes moving from anywhere to anywhere. It like pretty universally sucks, and it's hard and takes a long time and money and whatever. But within like a couple days of actually having the boxes dumped in the house here, I felt my blood pressure drop, because my whole life, I think you don't notice how much extraneous noise and stress there is from just the vibration of a bazillion human beings, like just in your vicinity all the time. And when you have some space to breathe, and when you breathe, that air is cleaner, and when you see nature just down the block and not just on a screen because it's so far away, you can't visit it that day. All these things, I think, are good for humanity, and definitely have been good for me.
Yeah.
Everyone that I've met, even before we moved here, just from posting on like those Facebook groups and whatever, everyone was extremely welcoming.
Yeah.
And I find it striking that in an area where the population is so less dense than where I came from, I don't know if that would have been the case if I was going the other way and I posted on some Chicago thing or whatever. I think people are so, whether it be jaded from just being crowded together or from all the traffic or from the crime or pollution, or take your pick. I don't think people act like that anymore, unfortunately.
Right.
When you get towards the higher populated areas.
Right.
So, for me, that's amazing that people have been like so nice, and so, overall impressions are so far very, very positive.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how that may influence your songwriting and just the way everything for the people you interact with and all that, how that may shape something for you in the future, which is to me very exciting.
I've already written like a number of songs that popped out of my head about like history in small towns and stuff like that. And I'm like, where's this coming from? It's obviously coming from where I live now, and from like going on short little road trips through all the little towns around here, and from walking among the trees and birds and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely has an effect. It sits in your brain and in your imagination, and then when you sit down to create something new, it inevitably comes out different than it would if you were somewhere else.
Yeah, and Southwest Michigan, I mean, much to the reason why I started this podcast was to talk to the people, but also to learn not only their individual stories, but also dive into history and all kinds of different things, because there's just so many stories that are still yet to be told.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm looking forward to hearing that music in the future, and hopefully you maybe one of the community theaters or high schools or something like that performs something you do, and we'll just have to wait and see what ends up happening with that in the future. But Mike, for people that either have listened to this conversation or watched this and still want to know more about you, what is something that people may not know about Mike O'Mara?
Oh, something they may not know. Oh man, I have no idea. Something they may not know from if they just meet me at this age is that I used to have purple spiked hair, and I wore dog collars and punk band T-shirts literally every day of my life for maybe 5 straight years when I was in grad school. They may not know that when I'm not, playing 400-year-old music or browsing antique shops, I'm a pretty competitive video gamer. They may not know that. I feel like I live in 2 very different worlds. So I'm either reading up on they might not know that if I wasn't a music teacher, I'd definitely be a history teacher.
Okay.
They might not know that. specifically World War One, and then right after World War One, and then World War Two. So I've read, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of books and watched hundreds of documentaries on both of those wars.
Wow.
I would have definitely been a history teacher if it wasn't for music. So.
Well, there's still time. I think you're in the area of what are the first towns in, because you said you live in Berrien Springs, so one of the first towns in Berrien County. So there's little history for you.
Yeah, you can't swing a cat out here without hitting an antique store, and I think that says something cool about the area.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, last question: if you were to title, I mean, for you, it almost, instead of being an autobiography of yourself, if you were to write a song, what would you title if the song was about you and your story?
I would title a song about me. You never know, because especially this past year, but I think throughout, especially my adulthood, I could not have predicted. When I was that kid that went into college extremely frightened to even play in front of people, and I didn't know what I was doing in school for music when I didn't really enjoy playing music in front of other people because I was so scared of it. If you would have told that kid that you would work for some of the biggest companies in Chicagoland, and that you would write some songs for that would be played for Stephen Sondheim one day, I was able to do that. That you would go to Japan and play for the royal family of Japan one day. That you would go all the way, go around the world and around the country playing, your own stuff. That you'd write so many musicals that you'd start a school, and then after all that, you would just pack up and move to a new state. I would have said that's crazy.
That does sound crazy. Yeah. But like you said, you never know what's gonna happen next, because like you said, that stuff has happened, but there's still a lot of things to be had in the future. And let me be the probably 10,000th person to say it, but welcome to Southwest Michigan.
Thanks so much.
And look forward to many more conversations with you in the future. But thank you so much for being a part of this and telling me a little bit of your story.
Yeah, my pleasure.